Hi, everybody. For decades, I've been hearing rumors about how the media in America is all owned by the Jewish people and you can't trust it. I wonder, is this true? So, because there's no greater power in the world today, in the whole world, than that wielded by the people who manipulate public opinion here in America. And this power that's not distant, it's not impersonal, it's right there in our homes every waking hour of our day. Um, they have the power, they inundate us with things and have the power to shape and mold how we look at and think about what we think about our world around us. I know I certainly watch them and have all my life. So I thought that this would be something that would be interesting to look into. So I wanted to check into kind of what the history of the media was, and then to find out who owns it and what do they do with it, and then find out about controls. Do we have any controls on it? Are they working? Okay, so so what is media? Webster's dictionary defines media as the various means of mass communication. Now, they said that it can be traced all the way back to the dramas performed on stages in the ancient cultures. Today, media has been differentiated into 7 categories. There's print, which includes all the books, pamphlets, newspapers, magazines, all of that. The first book was Diamond Sutra, printed in China in 868 AD. Now, of course, we know that there were ones that were printed before that, but this one was dated, so it's the oldest dated one. Newspapers were actually developed in the 1600s, but didn't really come into a mass communication, mass media quality until the 19th century. We have recordings, which include gramophones, which include records, magnetic tapes, cassettes, DVDs, CDs, all of those, and they date from the 19th century. And we have cinema, which dates from around 1900, radio from 1910, television came in about 1945, the internet about 1990, and of course mobile phones, which came in about around 2000. They began to be considered mass media, mass communication devices, so they're media. Okay. Each mass media type has its own content types, its own creative artists and technicians, and its own business models. For example, the internet has websites, blogs, podcasts, that kind of thing. Okay. So that's kind of what media is. Cambridge University professor of communications, John Thompson, lists 5 characteristics that define whether something is a media. They say that it comprises technical and institutional methods of production and distribution, so it has to be able to make the information and get it out. It involves co-modification of symbolic forms, so what they say we understand. The separate context between the production and the reception of the information. So, for instance, TV shows are made in studios, but we see them on our screens. Its reach is far, and it's to those far removed from us. So that think of the DJs and the talk radio people sitting in their little cubicle, but they're reaching thousands or millions of people. And the information distribution is, as I said, a one-to-many. And again, we're talking about that. Okay, so as we can see, media is a vast network of mass communication forms that's been around since at least the 15th century, but it's been exploding since the beginning of the 19th century. So who owns them? Okay, in an article entitled "Who Controls the American Media?" Brian Herring states that the media is dominated by 7 major companies. There's AOL, Time Warner, headed by Gerald Levin; Disney Family Company, owned by the Disney family; Viacom Incorporated, headed by Summer Redstone; Vivendi Universal is headed by Edgar Bronfman Jr. Rupert Murdoch has his news corporation, which includes Fox, but also all of his newspapers. And then there's the Associated Press, whose managing editor is Michael Silverman. And then there's DreamWorks, who was started in the 1990s by David Geffen, Jeffrey Katzenberg, and Steven Spielberg. All of these names, as you can tell, are Jewish, and yes, our media is owned or controlled or operated mostly by Jewish people. Okay, so what are they doing with it? What do they use it for? So it really, mass media or mass communication encompasses much more than just the news, although that's sometimes how we think about it. It can be used for various purposes. There's the advocacy, which includes advertising, marketing. They put propaganda in here, public relations, and political communications, as we've all just been through. There's entertainment, which I think is what we use it most for. Used to be considered acting and music, but now, of course, it's TV shows, radio shows, and video and computer games are being considered to be the 8th form of mass media at this point. And then there's also, they also use for public service announcements and emergency alerts to help the public, okay? So that's kind of what they use it for. We now understand better who owns it and how it affects our lives. So let's look at who's controlling the media. Is anybody? In the United States, the Federal Communication Commission, the FCC, is charged with regulating our telecommunications and mass media. Its executive summary and overview, dated June 9, 2011, stated in part that even during the peak period of deregulation of the 1990s and the early 2000s, they believe that the basic requirement that all stations, all media, must serve the public interest endured. So they believe that they're doing a good job, in other words. This report also concluded that some current FCC policy is not in sync with the nature of modern media. So, you know, technology is kind of outstripping where the rules are. And they also believe that the current policies are not likely to help us as the focus of all this communication until the policies catch up. Okay, so that kind of answers our question. The media's been around for a long time, but since the advent of the movies in 1900, it's really exploded. It pervades every area of our lives and every second of our days. The corporations who own the media in the U.S. are very few, which gives those people who run it a lot of power over us. The FCC seems to have our best interests at heart, but they're a little bit behind the times and need some help to catch up. So it seems to me that we, who are the focus of all this mass communication, need to help our government's policies and regulations catch up with the technology. So we need to all know more about where our information comes from in order to make sure of the honesty, fairness, and truth of the data that we receive. Thank you very much.